let's move down into the fruit of the Spirit, the part that most of us are familiar with as we read through the book of Galatians chapter 5. This is the passage that most of us have memorized. There's going to be a healthy amount of biblical sermons on this particular passage, so let's read it. Starting in verse 22 and 23, we read the first part of this passage. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, right? There's 9 aspects of the fruit of the Spirit. Against such things there is no law. Martin Luther's comments here are going to be representative of your garden variety Christian sentiments on the last phrase. It says, against such things there is no law. Here's what Martin Luther has to say. The law does not concern him. As far as he is concerned, there would not have to be any law, end quote. It's unfortunate that Martin Luther is going to spin his commentary that way, because it creates a quandary for the Jewish believer who seeks to continue down a path that makes him not only look Jewish, but makes him look Torah observant. So let's read my commentary and see what I have to say about this. You guys already know where I'm going to go with this. Top of page 171. When we read through the Torah with unbiased eyes, one does not encounter laws without love and rules without relationship. Instead, what you're going to find is you're going to encounter a God that's brimming with love for his people Israel. A God so in love with and concerned about them, right? This is if when you start reading through the Old Testament, for example, as a Christian, and you start reading about Israel, what you're going to find is a God that's so in love with and concerned about his people that he rescues them from the clutches of lawless Egyptian bondage and brings them to the foot of Har Sinai, that's Mount Sinai, to personally hand them his gracious and righteous law. God's voice spoke from the mountain that day, right? Read Exodus chapter 19 and chapter 20. This is the very same law, I go on to say, that Paul in the New Testament, quote unquote, calls holy, righteous, and good, right? He calls it holy, righteous, and good in Romans 7:12. This is the same law that Paul calls spiritual in Romans 7:14. This is the same law that Paul says he delights in with his inner being in Romans 7:21. This is the same law that Paul confesses he is subject to with his mind in Romans 7:25. Are you guys beginning to see my point yet? Right? You read through the Torah with unbiased eyes, and this is what you're going to find. I think this is what Paul did after his eyes were opened, right? The scales dropped from his eyes. And what did he do? He didn't have a New Testament. He had to turn to the pages of the Tanakh in order to understand this Messiah that he had not seen all of his life, this Yeshua who was hidden from him all of his life as a religious Pharisaic Jew. He did not understand who this Jesus was. But then suddenly the Spirit removed the scales, his eyes were opened, and what did he do? He turned right back to the Tanakh and began to read again with eyes afresh. And what did he see? Those are the things that he saw, the things I just described there. So I go on to say, I think it hardly considered of the Torah or of Paul's writings to pin Paul with the concept of identifying the law of God as worthless when it comes to love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I don't think it's Paul that would identify the law as worthless when it comes to identifying with those things. You understand what I'm saying here? Paul now has his eyes opened by the Spirit, so he can see that there is a relevance to the words of God.